Hello everyone and welcome to another Daily Muppet. Today is the deadline day edition as the transfer window closes in the UK and around Europe for the mid-season. And it looks like after United appeared to be completely inactive that they have woken up a little bit in light of Eriksen's injury. So we'll talk about that. We will talk about a few other things. I have some tidbits with regards to the owner process, the takeover process, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and get into a few things from there. I'll get to the midfield thing in a moment because I want to talk about this with Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the potential ownership of United, as even though the Sabitzer one is nice to get him in, and it's likely going to happen, and we'll go over that. The most important transfer is obviously the transfer of the ownership of the club and what happens in the end with that. This summer we need to make a lot of decisions, and there's a lot of things that need to happen to get the club back on top. And yeah, so talking about that first. With regards to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, one of the things that I was told from a very good source on this, and I've gotten good information from the Ineos and Ratcliffe side since August, is as recently as last week, was that he's been talking with someone, I don't know who, but it's sort of becoming known among certain people that his plans, which he's already kind of making or thinking about with regards to United, would encompass pretty much wholesale changes to the footballing side of the club, the structure, all of that. And what does that mean? It means changes to basically everything on up from Erik ten Hag, the coaches, obviously like the on-the-ground staff when it comes to, you know, scouts, analysts, etc. So you're thinking technical directors, director of football, the whole football structure, CEO, etc. He has plans to change all of it. And that is not unexpected, but it is good to get that kind of information. Now, will that be right away? Maybe, maybe not. You might want to go through a window without rocking the boat too much with all the preparation being done and just some money if he ends up being the person to take over the club. But I think long-term, most people would agree it could be upgraded. The football side of Manchester is something they have been working on, but it still needs more work. It can still be improved. It can still be better. And ideally, Manchester United is very efficient in their transfers and is top class in recruitment, not just throwing money, because that's just another way to end up wasting $1 billion without winning anything of note. So there are plans for that already being made should Sir Jim Ratcliffe take over the club and be the winning bid. And following up on that, there's another thing that I've heard from the same side, and like I said, I don't think I'm going to get much with regards to if it's people from Middle East or anything like that. I'm only hearing bits from Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe's side, as well as, you know, things with regards to America. That's just by nature of where I hear things. There's some things that I can't say right now, but that I could hopefully, starting in the next few days or week, that will hopefully open up clues or information to finding out what's going on. But they lead me to believe that there is a note of confidence right now coming from Sir Jim Ratcliffe's camp and side and team and all that they can get the winning bid for Manchester United. So there's just things that imply that, okay? Again, it doesn't mean it's done. It doesn't mean there aren't other parties. It may be that there's other parties that he's not even aware of. But there's some confidence from his side that he could get a deal being done. There was this article about how, you know, executives don't think he's serious or something like that. I believe he is. I believe he's very, very serious from what I've heard. And that he's approached this fairly well, and he's all prepared for what he needs to do, and is very kind of gung-ho about getting this deal done and completing the takeover. Obviously, it's going to come down to money if there's other bidders and people involved, but yeah, there's things that imply confidence, and hopefully, just from something that I've been told recently, I'll be able to provide a bit more detail and information in the next few weeks with regards to what is actually happening from Ineos and all of that, okay? And I know that's a little bit vague, but for now, I'll just have to leave it at that and continue working through things. Moving on then to the midfield madness today and what has occurred. Obviously, we got the news. I woke up to the news that Eriksen's injury was actually a bit more serious than expected, unfortunately, in terms of their expectations. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep up with things because everything's just happening all at the same time. The expectation of his injury was worse, being out till April or May, and that's almost the season effectively, right? So it's a bad situation in that regard for Eriksen that he's going to be out. It's interesting here because I was ready to go on and say, look, to be very optimistic and say, look, I'm not too worried because I've been saying on here, talking about it. I think people are starting to come around to this too. There's a downside with Eriksen. There's been a downside for months now where we fall off pretty heavily in the second half and we fall off when he tires, and we fall off after gaining leads, and the energy in the midfield dies. His off-ball ability is not great. The work rate is not really there. The energy is not really there, and it creates difficulty. So I was ready to say, look, at least we've got Fred who provides that, and I suspect we'll play really well. I mean, when Fred came on, I know it's just Reading, but Fred comes on, and instead of settling at a 1-0, we scored 2 goals in 10 minutes, including a brilliant one from Fred. And he technically got the assist for Casemiro despite that. But I think that partnership of Casemiro and Fred is going to be really built up well over the next few months. And I think we're going to see some really impressive games where we keep our foot on the throttle a bit more and push the advantage, push the lead, and really grind teams into dust rather than getting those 1-0s and looking shaky till the end of the game. That's an advantage. I was ready to say that would work. If he was going to be gone for, a month, 6 weeks, something like that, we can make it work. We can manage. Being gone till April, May, obviously the problem is now you have essentially just Casemiro, Fred, and Bruno healthy in the midfield. That's it. There's nobody else that can even rotate. Scott McTominay is not with the team right now. I know a lot of people don't think he should be up to even rotating with Casemiro, and I tend to agree. Based on recent performances, it's a huge step down. So Sabitzer then popping up as a name is incredibly interesting, and how this kind of happened is United had reached out about Ryan Gravenberch a bit earlier. It was the tiniest hint of a thing, so it wasn't really much to say about it. And Bayern decided they didn't want to let him go. Reports came out about that, and then I guess in the last 24 hours they got back in touch and said, "Hey, Sabitzer is available. You could take him." They've just signed Cancelo. Maybe they're trying to save some wages. Maybe Cancelo, they feel the role with Cancelo is that he's going to stay, that he's even going to get into the midfield a little bit. It's always possible. I really don't know how they play. But I know Cancelo is very flexible. Let's see. And, in terms of the type of player that Sabitzer is, I can't say that I've watched him an enormous amount. But in 2022, even a little bit earlier, one of the sources I speak with was really excited about him, high on him, hoping that United could bring him in, thinking he was a good target. At one point, United were watching, and this was before Ralph, were watching Lamer and Sabitzer and a lot of players on that Red Bull side, even Tyler Adams. Sabitzer seems to be a bit of... He's a he's a high energy midfielder. I mean, he's not Fred, but he's more similar to Fred than he is to Eriksen. He has good dribbles and passing range, but he's a very high energy midfielder who's going to defend, who's going to press, who's going to work his ass off ball and out of possession. So I think it's a good fit. And the part I really like about it is, I've been saying for some time, I think our better profile is a Fred. A better Fred next to Casemiro is better than an Eriksen profile in terms of how we play. And I think a lot of people agree with that at this point, that if we had an upgrade there, you'd want more of a Fred than you would an Eriksen in terms of energy, in terms of running, in terms of pressing, in terms of off-ball. That's what you'd want more of. And Enzo Fernandez being a bit of that profile would be the best target, but it looks like he's going to Chelsea, unfortunately. Maybe. We'll see with that one. That one's been crazy. And... So Sabitzer's a good option to kind of see, to have a similar profile where you're always getting the energy. I mean, when you have Casemiro, Fred, Bruno, and Eriksen as the 4 options for 3 spots, no matter what you do, you're going to get a really, really energetic midfield that is going to outwork your opponents, and I think that's important. I think he brings good quality as well. I think he could cover Casemiro, and you could play Sabitzer, Fred, and Bruno. So it gives a lot of options. I really, really like the idea of it. I think it's a good deal. I think it's something that I think it's smart, you know, for the rest of the year. And let me see. I'm just checking here before I move on from this. All right. So we'll see if there's an option or not. I don't think it matters. I think we could do better in summer anyway, but in terms of needing an upgrade for the starting position if we choose to. But it's going to be good to see. I'm quite excited about this one. I think it's helpful. I think it'll allow us to give a little bit of rest. But I also love the idea of the profile in that midfield where we're getting kind of the same energy of Casemiro, Fred, Eriksen, even if Sabitzer's in there rotating. However, one of Fred and Sabitzer being on the pitch at any given time, to me, is a huge bonus as we move into this period where we need that energy. So I really like that. I really like the move. Now, the other thing is that there's some reports that it was like a last-second panic thing. It wasn't. I mean, it was in his respect, right? They only went for him because of the injury and all that. However, he has been on the radar a while. In the Discord I put on April 22nd, 2022, so this was after kind of Ten Hag was already through the interviews and looking and the manager and going to be the manager, they had identified Sabitzer as a potential second midfield signing, not the 6, but the 8. And they went with Eriksen on a free, right? So, but Sabitzer would have been on that list for midfield even last year. So they're aware of him. They know him. They know who he is. They know what they're getting. They have watched him. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. They have. So that is the truth of it, and it seems a smart signing. Moving on to... Oh, that's not what I meant. I had this last time. Let me remove this. Moving on to the... Let me just make this bigger again. The FFP thing, you know, I've seen still a lot of reports just to kind of clear this up saying United have to sell to buy and all of that. And it really does need to be made clear that this isn't really the truth. United don't. There was a good thread that broke down what I put out on video from someone. I retweeted it, but that they can spend somewhere between 200 and 300 million this summer without running afoul of FFP. However, that does mean that they need some help in terms of debts paid off from new owners and all that, so they don't have losses. That is where it matters on FFP, that they don't have losses, but it's not that 90% cap. In terms of sales, it would be beneficial to get them because it frees up more space for the following year when the cap goes down to 80% and the following year when it goes down to 70%. So it would be better to get in some money, get some amortizations off, and make it easier for the future. I do expect one of those center backs to be sold. There's been a lot more rumors about people asking now. They're not going to be let go in January, but Maguire, Lindelof going in summer is very likely. Van de Beek and McTominay, and then Martial. And we got an interesting thing here. I'm just thinking out loud, but outside of the major signings, if you have a situation where then you can let go of Martial and sign Weghorst for 10 million, and you can let go of McTominay and sign Sabitzer for 20 million and get virtually equal costs but amortized, you actually free up more FFP space while upgrading your depth, where you say, good, Weghorst is a good backup option. Sabitzer's a good backup option. Now we have even more money to sign on top because we got these sales and we were able to amortize the cost of the purchases over 5 years. That's how it works. They'd actually have more money by selling Martial and McTominay. Even if the net spend was 0, like they sold Martial for 10, McTominay for 20, and they bought Weghorst for 10, Sabitzer for 20, they'd actually end up with more money to spend. That's the way that FFP works. So you could upgrade the depth while getting more money to sign starters, and I hope it's something to thinking about. Because moving into summer, my camera shifted again. Moving into summer, I see that, you know, there's the options lining up with Enzo off out of the picture. I still see that the striker is the number one most important thing, the most likely thing, the most vital thing that's going to happen, and a goalkeeper is up there. And in terms of those signings, with the money that United have the ability to spend, you know, Victor Osimhen becomes possible when you look at this. If they can be smart about spending in certain areas, a Victor Osimhen becomes possible in summer. And from what I know, the reason I'm bringing this up is, as I know, they've contacted most of the representatives in recent weeks of the main targets, which includes Osimhen, includes Kane, includes Šeško, and includes Ramos. So they're keeping it on the table. If you could move Tony on, free up those wages, get Weghorst on it cheap, bringing in someone like Osimhen becomes very valuable, where you can still spend elsewhere. After breaking the FFP down, I got much more encouraged that they could do this, that they could sign Osimhen, they could sign Costa even at goalkeeper if they need to, and they would still have money left over to do some other things, especially if they can make it work with Weghorst or, you know, something like that, and get some other sales in. So it's becoming very exciting, all of this. I think you're seeing the idea of what Ten Hag wants with a Sabitzer loan, an energetic midfielder in there. It would be his ideal replacement. So in terms of a midfielder, that's kind of the profile. That high energy, work rate midfielder. Up front at striker, I think you can see it. Pressing, high work rate, all of that as well. And a goalkeeper, we know. So it looks like this deal is going to get done. It's confusing as to whether it's a loan or with an option or not. A lot of what it says is that it's just a straight loan. I think that's what David Ornstein says. Usually I go with him first, and that makes sense to me. You know, one, it's hard to work out a deal in this time in terms of with Bayern down to the wire. Two, I don't think, look, we can all get excited about Sabitzer. I think we can and need better come summer if we're going to spend money on a midfielder. I do. Now, going back and signing him as a depth, maybe, but you just don't know. And so it is what it is. But it's probably more to do with the fact that there's not much time involved, and maybe there's different options being looked at come summer in terms of availability. Okay, so enjoy the rest of the day. Hopefully this gets across the line. We put out earlier the flight before everything's kind of broke open again when the talks were there. And he was there at you know, on that flight, so that seems like that was all right. He's on the plane now, traveling. Hopefully it gets done. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. I'll see you in the next one.